Hello, my name's Nicole DiMaggio, and I am completing this project for my RES 5153 Research Methods class through the American College of Education, and my professor is Dr. Sean Nink. And this action research plan was conducted on differentiated instruction. So introducing this action research plan, differentiated instruction is crucial to student success. So students in the classroom need to have instruction that is tailored to their needs in order for them to be benefiting from the academics. And this is not only a benefit towards their academic growth, it's also a benefit towards their emotional growth as well. Um, when we provide differentiated instruction to students, we are clearly setting them up for success because they're receiving information towards what they need and their ability level. So, the purpose of this action research plan was to help students receive proper differentiated instruction in the classroom and to help set them up for success. And going along with that, making sure that teachers are implementing differentiation in their classroom and to find out whether or not the implementation process has a large effect on student success then or not, or if just having differentiated instruction in the classroom is a large enough benefit on itself. So for the problem statement, one thing that needed to be found was classrooms not utilizing differentiated instruction, not a sufficient amount of training to teachers to implement and do it effectively, and removal of one size fits all approach. So there are classrooms out there who are still focusing on that one size fits all approach, not tailoring instruction to individual needs. So, teaching whole group lessons to the targeted audience and not simplifying it or challenging it based on student need. So, that needs to be removed from our classrooms because that is not an effective approach. And this is where the utilization of differentiation needs to come into play. And then along with that, making sure that there's enough training for teachers to feel that they can implement this effectively and they feel confident in integrating it into their daily practices. My research questions that drove the data for this action research plan was: how does differentiated instruction affect student performance, and how does a teacher properly implement differentiated instruction in the classroom? These are my two main questions because I wanted to know what kind of benefits, if any, does differentiated instruction have on student performance throughout the year, weekly, and in general. And then I also wanted to know if a teacher's just simply implementing differentiated instruction, is that going to benefit the students, or is there a proper way for teachers to do it effectively? So, for literature review number one, the purpose of this literature review was to investigate the difference of performance in a given subject area with students receiving differentiated instruction and students who are not receiving differentiated instruction. So, this literature review focused on two different focus groups based on students who were receiving it and who were not receiving it. And the findings of this one were that all students who had differentiated instruction were largely impacted, and their students and their performance had positive correlations with it. Along with that is something I found interesting about outside cultural and personal factors had no effect on their academics. So sometimes we see barriers for different cultures in the classroom or different languages, but using differentiated instruction, every student was benefiting from the instruction they were given, and there was no outside factor that was hindering them from being successful. Literature review 2 focused on how differentiated instruction gives all students an opportunity to be successful. So, this was a study about how it followed a group of students, and they wanted to know that if they felt that their classroom set them up for success and why and how. And that was all because of differentiated instruction in the classroom. So, they felt their content was set up for success all because of differentiated instruction in the classroom. And even greater success was shown when a specific focus group of students were followed throughout the years in different grade or different subject areas. And they had even greater success when it went to looking at their different benefits from differentiated instruction and how it helped tremendously in a positive way throughout all the years and through the different through the different subject areas. Literature review number 3 focused on a teacher's sense of efficacy in their knowledge implementation of differentiated instruction. So basically, if the teacher felt confident in their instruction based on their experience or their knowledge they had towards it. And something that I found very interesting was that this article came to show that there really was no large effect on the implementation process. It was just showing that all students truly benefit from having the opportunity of differentiated instruction in their classroom. And the teachers' knowledge or their length of differentiated instruction did not have a huge effect, which really was eye-opening because it goes to show how important it is for teachers to be using this in their classroom, and that even if they aren't fully confident or knowledgeable in their ability, they can start little and learn from there, but it'll help the students so much. So the research and the methodology used was progress monitoring, and this was for quantitative data on student performance, and then interview questions with both students and administration, and this was to receive qualitative data, so responses from students and teachers. So data collection 1 was the weekly progress monitoring. So a student and teacher in the focus group worked on a specific progress monitoring that involved letters, letter sounds, sight words, foundational skills as that. And this collected quantitative data, and there was a chart based on the student progress. And the chart exemplifies that every single student who was in this focus group showed growth throughout their progress monitoring journey. Now, sometimes there was spots where people would stay on a standstill, but nobody ever declined. So these were all students receiving differentiated instruction, and their progress monitoring results over the given period of time only increased, which is a huge data piece to observe and analyze, because that is really important for teachers to recognize that every student made growth and nobody regressed during this process. Data collection 2 was interview questions with students in the focus group. So this is where the teacher sat one-on-one with each student in the focus group and asked them specific questions pertaining to differentiated instruction in the classroom, their confidence in their learning, their engagement, their motivation. And this was a collection of qualitative data, as for it was students' verbal responses, and these verbal responses were used to compare and contrast answers between the students in the focus group. And lastly, data collection number 3 was used another interview question, but this time it was between an administrator and the teacher implementing the differentiated instruction in the classroom. So once again, this was qualitative data, as for it was verbal responses from the teacher. And then this was actually used in a line chart to then pinpoint where the teacher was throughout the year. So for data analysis number 1, based on the progress monitoring, every single student in the group, as previously stated, showed significant growth throughout their time using differentiated instruction. So 100% of the students in the focus group benefited from this. So it's interesting data to analyze, as for it shows only positive results and academic growth. So this is a good piece of data to use when working with colleagues and sharing information with colleagues in regards to the importance of differentiated instruction in the classroom. Data analysis number 2 was the students' responses, and I particularly found these very interesting because all students said that they were more confident in their academic abilities and that they were more engaged and motivated in their learning, even if it wasn't necessarily a topic of interest. They still knew that what they were receiving was perfect for their individual needs, so they didn't feel like it was going to be too boring or too challenging, and then they get frustrated. And then another thing I found interesting was that 4 out of the 5 students ended up saying that they felt like they weren't exhibiting engagement or motivation when they knew the teacher wasn't having differentiated instruction in the classroom, because they felt like it would be too much of a challenge or too easy for them. So why should they try if they weren't given the tools to be successful? So I found that interesting, as students are catching on as well to the importance of it in the classroom and how much it affects their success. Lastly, the data analysis number 3 was the conversation with the administrator, and there was a line chart implemented based on after the Q&A questions that they had with one another. She kind of pinpointed where she felt the educator was based on that given time of the year. So there's 3 check-ins, and then what it was compared to was a educator performing in the state that they were located in and who is ranked as high caliber of using differentiated instruction in the classroom. And what was found that this teacher was actually performing at the same, if not even slightly better than the teacher of the high caliber in the state. So this was my future action plan and my force field analysis. So basically, the primary goal of this action plan is to share data and information, receive parent input, and have all teachers successfully implement differentiated instruction in their classroom. And this is going to have to be done through collaboration and working together. You know, there's always driving forces and restraining forces. The driving forces would be working with colleagues and getting parent input and gathering more data points and working collaboratively to effectively implement this in all classrooms, and then making sure the best practices are identified and carried out within each classroom. And then on the opposite end of that is just restraining forces. You know, as educators, we always struggle with the concept of time and not having enough time to better our practices. And um something else is like pushback about trying something new. So a lot of teachers are set in their routines and their ways, and they know what's been successful for them, so just getting them in the shift of the mindset of to trying something new. So potential evaluation data sources for future action plan would be, you know, collaborative work, making sure that the best practices were identified and shared with one another so they knew exactly what needed to be implemented. Parent involvement and input would be helpful, you know, just parent involvement, just have another body in the classroom with helping if differentiating instruction, if you were in centers or something where they were in small groups, just having another body. And then, as previously stated, all teachers on board for this change. Sometimes it's scary to try something new, but the benefits backed by the data show that it really is almost essential to implement this in the classroom. My conclusion was that differentiated instruction shows strong benefits and needs to be used in all classrooms. I feel as though differentiated instruction should not be an option or a choice, it should be a requirement. All students are benefiting from this, and we're setting them up for success. So, as the educator, why would you not want to give them this opportunity? If you don't try something new, you're never going to know the success it brings. You need to try something new and get yourself out of your comfort zone if you're wanting your students to go out of their comfort zone as well. Thank you for listening.